Hmm. What's on the dashboard? All right, let's see if this works. All right, let's see if this works. Mute these things. Doing this on a laptop is not exciting. And I'm going to close my video preview in hopes it doesn't blow anything up further. Okay. I'm going to keep the chat open on my phone because the laptop I have this running on is potato. And this might be the only way that it works. So basically what I'm doing right now is just giving everything a very thorough clean. You can be turned down too, so I'm not echoing on everything. Basically, like, the biggest thing with brewing is you want everything to be as clean as possible, essentially. Like, there's no such thing as too clean. Basically, it's cleaning, sanitize, and sterilize. You can't really sterilize at home. So you have to do your best to make sure you're cleaning to the best of your abilities. There's a couple of really good products. Cleaning Street, yeah, Screech, 100%. Let me know how it's coming through too. On my phone, it looks really crappy. I'm hoping the audio is okay. I'm not too upset if the picture lags. do that a little tilt too. Yeah, hopefully it's okay. We'll see. We shall see. So what we're doing is it's a kolsch style beer, which is a hybrid yeast. It's pretty incredible. Generally, you have your lager yeast and your ale yeast. Ales tend to ferment at a higher temperature, like 64 to 70. Each one has a little bit of a different performance rate or ideal temperature, and the higher you ferment at, the more flavors you can pick up off the yeast. So a lot of times, if you're wanting a clean beer, you want a little bit of a lower temperature. So for this one, I don't have fermentation control, which I know is a big faux pas. That should be the first thing I do, but I decided to get all the other toys, I guess, instead. The program that I have up here, and I'm hoping it clicks over, which it's not. Bastard. Yeah, I think that one's just because it doesn't have anything to focus on. I also got to get this working so it actually picks up the, let's do this instead. You can see my makeshift, there we go. So what this is because more yeast is a good thing, you make a starter essentially. So I use these basically liquid yeast packs from White Labs. They're fantastic, and they have one that's a German ale kolsch yeast, which is perfect for brewing a kolsch style beer. This comes with 1 billion cells, I guess is what you would call it. Ideally, you want a little bit more. So what this calculator does is tells me how many cells I need and what I need to create to get to that cell point. So this really should probably be at a 1, but because I'm fermenting at a little bit of a higher temperature, I'm not too concerned about killing yeast off, so I'm going to keep it at an ale. Our final gravity of the beer, we do have a recipe as well, and thankfully I have some nice programs that help with this stuff. So we're looking at our final gravity is going to be about 1.54. I think last time I actually finished at about 1.56. I was a little bit too efficient. Never been a problem in my life, but enable editing. For this beer, it's the Pilsner yeast. I always do a little bit extra time on the boil that we'll see on Friday if this goes well, and that really helps to get where we need it. Production date's interesting. Basically, yeast starts dying. Well, yeah, there's always going to be some yeast alive because they harvest yeast from beers that they find at the bottom of the ocean, but like, you never have 100% of the yeast alive in this thing. So you always want to make a little bit of a, well, essentially this calculator allows you to know what your viability is and then gives you a good idea of how much you have to build it up. So if I have a really old yeast package, I need to make a better starter. So this one is actually a little bit older than I thought, which is disappointing because I just got it 2 days ago. It was produced on November 16th. So we're going to add that in. And, okay. Come on, Excel, we friends, no? We work so much together. So this one's only 55% viable. Not fantastic. I'm only doing a 1 liter starter. Basically, you don't need to do this to make a good beer. This just improves your odds of consistently making good beer, essentially. So I have an Erlenmeyer flask that's twice this size, and what you can do is build this up to an extent where I have enough to pitch, and then I can save more. So it really cuts your expenses down for purchasing yeast. There's a lot of other ways you can do it, like yeast rinsing. You can just brew a beer. So if you bottle this or keg it, in my case I'll be kegging it, you can brew a new beer and push it right on top of the old beer. And because yeast is pretty good at staying alive for the most part, your beer will probably start fermenting again. There's some concern if you do it between different styles. If I do a super hoppy New England IPA, I don't necessarily want to do a kolsch on top where you don't want too much hops at all. Really, you just want to bitter it. That's about it. Probably should have changed. I was painting in these clothes, but that's okay. Yeah, so I don't know where I'm reaching in there. So initial count or viability is 55%. What this is going to do now is let us know how we're doing in terms of what we're making. So I use a stir plate. Stir plate's a kind of cool little device. This is overkill. You can make this with a computer fan and a magnetic stir stick, and it'll do just fine. This one, there's a company called Ontario Beer Kegs that's pretty fantastic, and they had this on a pretty good sale. So I said, fuck it, why not? So what this does is it continues to spin you can see it. You get a magnetic stir stick, and what it'll do is continue to aerate the wort that we're going to pitch the yeast into. So pretty cool little tool. I don't really have much use for it outside of making beer, but it does help. So what we're going to do now is we're doing an all grain beer. Part of that is I still got to crush all the grains for making the malt or the grain bill, but I want to get this going first. So what we're using to build this, and what a yeast starter is basically a really light beer. You're almost making like 2 bottles worth of beer, but instead of using malt or grain, which is like I have these individually packed by 1 pound, and this is Pilsner malt. You can kind of see it's the whole grain. This is a powdered version of that. So I could buy 15 pounds of this and make a beer just by adding it to boiling water, and you could boil it for an hour or to get rid of the DMS. Ferment it with some yeast. You can throw really any yeast on it, bottle it with some bottling sugar, and you'll have something that would be essentially beer, just not necessarily good. The only thing with this is it's bloody expensive compared to buying grain. So the cost goes up substantially. A lot of people, if they're doing extract or DME or LME, liquid malt extract or dry malt extract, it's mainly a convenience thing because you have to buy a lot more components to start doing the fancy stuff. So yeah, I'm trying to think what else. This calculator is going to tell me how much I need. I got a bunch of stuff set up on the ground here because this is more just a trial run than anything else. So I'm going to weigh out what I need in this situation. It's saying I need 101 grams of dry malt extract. So I got my fancy little scale down here. I don't know if that's okay. We're going to see. I'm taking my phone with me everywhere so I can see what the heck's going on. And we're going to measure that out. Interestingly enough, this bowl is 108 grams. The one thing that kind of sucks about dry malt extract is it tends to clump up really easily when you first add it in. So you got to be really careful to make sure you're stirring it quickly. If you pour it in slow, the condensation or water vapor that's coming up from the pot tends to hit it and make it clump right away. So it's a little bit finicky at times. 100, come on, come on. There we go. It's at 100 grams, and you know it's just going to jump to like 115 very quick. Yeah, so we're going to get some water up to a boil. I don't necessarily measure out too thoroughly with the water, which I should, because you want it within an ideal gravity for producing yeast in a short period of time. What I do is I know I want 1 gallon, or not 1 gallon, 1 liter of water essentially. I'm talking to the stove. My Erlenmeyer flask goes up to 1. It's also from Chengdu, China. Maybe that's close. If Ninja's watching, she can yell at me. So I'm just using tap water. Again, the more you do this, you're going to find that you're probably going to change a couple things. Like some people would probably let their water sit out overnight, just get rid of their chlorine. Some people might do some water treatment too to get their pH in line. I'm not going that hardcore today. And I'm thinking my pot's actually going to be a little bit too big that I took out. So I'm going to wash another smaller one just to make my life a little bit easier. And then we'll get that boiling, and we're going to start working on getting some grains ready for the grain mill. So the more stuff you can do in advance, the better. Like brew day, usually your first couple of times brewing always takes longer. Like if you're doing an extract brew, it's probably 2.5 hours, which is great. These all grain brews, even with me doing it on a propane burner outside, it's usually like 6 hours when you include all the cleaning, and really brewing is 97% cleaning. And so it's definitely time consuming. So it's getting things like the malt ready a day in advance and the yeast prep and ready to go. Yeast, if you're not making a starter, is not a problem. Like you can get dry packages of yeast, which I'll kind of show you what they come out as. They just look like this. This is basically a stout yeast safe brew S33. A lot of people make a lot of very good beer with this, and it's the cheapest option. I still like my liquid yeast. I've had the best luck with it. Kolsch yeast in particular, because it is good for such a wide range of temperatures, I find is great. It's not really to style for a lot of beers. If you're looking to make like a English pale ale, maybe not the best choice. But I've used it in IPAs with some luck, and just some pale ales are fine. It's an interesting twist instead of using like a California ale yeast, which is the most common. I'd rather not have soapy tasting beer. Ideally, I would have done this starter yesterday, but I got a little bit busy playing Resident Evil. Because then what you can do is if you put beer in a cold temperature, it causes the yeast to stop being active and drop to the bottom. And you can actually pour off a lot of the extra wort from the top, which is nice because really you're just making a super light beer. In this one, we're probably going to let it crash during the, well, no, I might just pitch the whole thing tomorrow. We'll see. But I might let it crash a little bit and see if I can pour off some of this extra beer, essentially, I guess, is what it will be at the end once it's done. So now we're going to bring this to a boil. Let's make sure I don't also boil some electronics. Open the window a bit because I don't think I'm going to run my old school exhaust fan while this is going on. And it'll help cool it anyways. So I'm going to spin the lapper around. Instead of having this open, we're basically done with this. I want to open up the beer recipe that we're working from and give you an idea of the malt bill. The hardest beers to brew are the beers with the least amount of flavors. And it's interesting to say that because the most common beer on the market is a light American lager. Light American lagers, your Budweisers. I'm in Canada, so you're going to get lots of Canadian examples. Your blues, your Canadian, well, you got some Pilsners in there, but essentially they find the cheapest ingredients possible to make the beer. And then the goal of a good lager, not necessarily Pilsner, but lager, is to have no flavor, essentially. The colder the beer, the less off flavors come through too. So a lot of people will have a good laugh when you see companies like Coors Light saying like, kill your beer, get it as cold as possible. Let's hide all of our mistakes that might be there. Not that there is any mistakes there, but it's kind of funny. So kolsch is kind of along the same. So the reason I have all these individually packed is I buy my 2-row malt in bulk, which is 65-pound bags. I don't use Pilsner malt as much, and I just wouldn't go through 65 pounds in a timely enough manner. So these are all Pilsner malts. Based upon the recipe, we need 10 pounds, so 2, 4, 6, 8, I really grabbed 9. 3, 6, 9. No. And I grabbed 9. So I'm going to run and grab another thing of malt quickly. Oh, what did you spin? There we go. So yeah, let me just go grab one more bag and then that'll get me leveled up. I'm going to try to put this in my chat somewhere where I can actually see it. Perfect. What do you want? That doesn't help me. Okay, sorry about that. Hey, William. Yeah, thank you. It's the new and improved floor cam, and I also gave you a nice ceiling cam as well. So, well, I'm trying to do a IRL stream, so maybe I'll spin that like that. Let you look at my old school counter. Okay, so the other thing that we have, and my thing tilted over, which is interesting. This is basically a mill, a grain mill. So it's fantastic. It's completely unnecessary. I like unnecessary though, so I tend to use it for a bit. And what it allows me to do is buy my grains in bulk and mill it at home without having to go to a homebrew store, or in Ontario, or Canada, I should say. Ontario Beer Kegs is fantastic. It's just, it's nice to be able to do it. William, I know. So we'll see. We'll see how she goes. The only thing is, this might be loud and annoying for everyone. I can do about 7 pounds at a time. I can kind of watch the water on this camera a little bit. So we're going to try to multitask as best as we can here. So give a little bit more, I guess, better idea of what we're using. Maybe I'll go to this camera. This is what the grains look like. You can just eat those. It tastes kind of just like a shitty granola bar. Pilsner has a little bit less flavor. Pilsner is the lightest of them all. 2 rows a little bit more, a little bit more flavor. I don't want to use bready because that's not really a great term for it. You get bready more from biscuit malts. But yeah, Pilsners are great. They impart the least amount of flavor on a beer, and they also have the lightest color. So a beer like a kolsch, you really want that golden color that you associate with almost like a lager. It's basically a hybrid lager. This is a beer that, if you don't really like the IPAs, the stouts, the more adventurous beers, this is one that you can give to your buddies as like the lawnmower beer, essentially. So it's the most popular amongst I don't want to say non-beer drinking, but the stereotypical Anheuser-Busch type drinkers. And I believe I'm boiling now. So we're going to let this boil for about 10 minutes. What it does is, maybe not quite there yet, when you're brewing beer, you have to let it boil because it releases, it's called DMS, but essentially there's off flavors if you don't boil off the DMS, and it just doesn't create a very good beer. There's more DMS in a Pilsner malt, so normally when you go to boil your beer, once you've created your wort, which we'll go over tomorrow ideally, I'll do a 90-minute boil for something that uses predominantly Pilsner malt, where if I'm doing like my IPA recipe or my EPA recipe, normally I'll just do a 60-minute boil. It tends to be satisfactory. You can never really overboil. Some beers like Scotch ales and things like that will actually reduce the wort to make it more of a caramel flavor, which is cool too. It's a beer style that some people really like. I've never really done it. I think they call it starts with a D, and I wouldn't mispronounce it, so I'm just not going to say it. And the mill's pretty cool. I'll bring the camera over just so you can kind of see what it is. And it hooks up to your drill. You can hand crank it and really get muscles in a hurry. I don't have muscles now. I've never had muscles. I don't really see a point to starting this late in my life. So I use my drill. This thing holds about 7 pounds. Our grain bill, it's a little bit over that, so I'm going to have to do it in 2 series. Water's looking pretty close to boiling. I know none of you guys, Christy doesn't like beer, Screech doesn't drink. I'm not sure if William enjoys a beverage or two. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I would hate to know how much time I spent reading about all this shit to try to get good. I made a couple beers. I have a couple beers I like. I've entered some in competitions. Some have done really well. My first beer I ever entered into a competition was a Belgian Trappist single, which is like a monk beer. And I thought it was pretty good. Like, I was pretty proud about it. And the judge came back and said it was undrinkable. I was a little disappointed to hear that. And I didn't quite agree with it because I had already drank a case of it. And if it was undrinkable, how could I drink a case? So I entered in another competition at the local college has a brewmaster program, and I entered 6 beers, and that's why you gotta be careful. It boils over very easily as well. So sometimes the bigger pot's a little bit better, and it's really sticky, so it's a pain in the ass for me to clean up. But I entered like 6 beers into this this brew competition, and that beer ended up winning best in show. So it's all pretty relative, and I think unless you're a BJCP certified master judge, or even a lot of those judges that have their certifications, take it with a grain of salt. If you're going to have such good, I want to boil over here. You're going to have a lot of fun doing it, and anything you make, you're going to like better because it's just that rewarding feeling of doing it. It's kind of like building something or giving your mom a shitty drawing that you did in school. She's going to love it just because you did it. And then after a while, your beer turns out pretty good. So, yeah, that Trappist single won best in show, which was great. Also made me wonder what the heck that guy was doing judging it, but at the other one. But there's also bottle variants. So there's 2 ways to carbonate your beer. One is to do it in the bottle, which is fantastic. A lot of good health properties when you bottle condition, add a little bit of sugar, and what it does is it restarts fermentation. And the byproduct of fermentation is carbon dioxide. So you're adding a little bit of sugar, it's getting the yeast all excited again. They start reproducing like bunnies, and it creates CO2, which when it's in the bottle, carbonates your beer. You gotta be careful, because if you screw it up, you can create bottle bombs, which I haven't done yet, but I've created volcanoes, and they're a little bit intense to open. I'm also realizing I'm brewing without a beer in my hand, which is a sin. But we're going to let this boil. We shouldn't have any boil over issues now. We're going to give that 10 minutes, just get any DMS out of there. And then we got to cool it as fast as possible, which we'll do through an ice bath, basically. The stove is a little bit old school, Liam. No doubt. That was a Kijiji purchase when I bought my house, and it's you can't get a Dutchman to replace something that works quite well, unless it's in my basement. My basement's my baby. I wanted to stream this from the basement, but I couldn't get the thing to a boil down there, so that was off the table. So I'm going to slide this a little bit closer. Extreme closer. And I do have to measure out a little bit of grains too for the Munich malt that's required in the recipe there. So this is, maybe I'll get this set up first before I start making you get too close. So you can't really go gung-ho on this. You kind of got to taper it because you don't want to shred. If you shred your malt, it releases a lot of tannins. Tannins are just horrible, unwatchable. Yeah, what am I even doing with my life? But yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, you get your pile of grains. Sorry for the noise. I would like to stop and show you the grain consistency, but I'm going to wait for it to be at least done all of it, because as soon as I take this off, it creates almost like a flour. You can turn this into flour when you're done and reuse it if you're super intense. I haven't done that yet. Your best bet is if you know a farmer that's got pigs, they'll eat this shit. I just throw mine in my compost bin and let the trash guys come pick it up every week. How to do this without losing my webcam into a batch of beer. That makes sense. Will do, Screech. So I'm just going to take a second to stir this and make sure none of this stuff is sticking to the bottom. You really would ideally want a vigorous boil as well. So this is a little bit it's lacking veracity, I guess. Might be a word I made up. Okay. You good? I might let that go a little bit longer, but I'll turn the beep off because it's quite annoying. My understanding is pigs eat anything. So just give you a look. That's kind of what the grain mill is. You want to keep all your bits away from that because, yeah, if you lose your bits in there, you're going to have a bad time. This is Munich malt. It's a you don't really ever use it as your majority grain. Well, I guess you could if you really wanted to. It just wouldn't be a very good beer. It's used a lot though in imparting a little bit more body to the beer. A little bit more to the mouthfeel as well too. So I'm just checking out what I need here, which is 8 ounces of this. And then we'll add that in with these last couple bags, and then at least our grain bill's done. And that life's good. Still a little bit sticking on here. Really just tastes like sugar at this point, like how the DME is. Dry malt extract, I shouldn't use acronyms. It also is going to add a little bit more to the color as well too. So if you compare the two malts, no, drill is fantastic. You can just take the handle off. I think that's what most people do. Oh, sorry. So this is the Munich malt. You can see if you compare it, not very well. It is a little bit darker. It's going to add just a little bit more color than what you're going to get just from the kosher malt. So it's good. I don't know why I'm pouring it directly in there. I kind of want to give an example. So some people I've seen will put a little bit of wheat in their kolsch just to help with head retention a little bit. Head retention, more of an issue with higher alcohol beers and uncooperative girlfriends. Just kidding. I don't know if you guys can hear me well enough going down here either. I really ripped that hole far too small. It's you definitely get like tired out when you do a full day of brewing. You're always moving, and there's always stuff to do too. So generally, if you're sitting still, it means you're just procrastinating. Good thing my dog likes this. You generally just procrastinating cleaning, um, but you can always kind of keep busy during all of it. So it's a nice way to keep your ass in gear on the weekend. Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good also. So we're going to do the last of this. Actually, first we're going to do an ice bath. So because we want to cool the beer as fast as possible, I have something when I normally brew that's called a wort chiller. Wort is basically once you make the tea out of the grains. Now we're relating to Christy here. Once you make the tea, what's left before it's alcoholic or you add yeast to it is called the sweet wort, basically. Well, sweet wort's when it's right out of the mash tun, but the hot wort. And what you want to do is cool that hot wort as fast as possible. So what I have is like 25 foot of copper coil that's coiled up, and I run cold water through it, and it displaces the heat essentially. With this one, because it's such a small amount, I just do an ice bath and let it transfer that way. It's not as fast as I would like, but it generally does a pretty darn good job. Let that go until this happens. The nice thing is, I even have some ice ready to go. I'm going to hit the signal off so I don't make everyone go deaf. Lid's going, I didn't clean the lid. Lid's also going to go on. And it's, you learn after a while, if you forget to do something, you like lose sleep over it because you figure that's what's going to be the one small variable that ruins your beer. So now we put this in, ice bath away. Got to make sure not to add too much water because it'll float and tip. While that's cooling, let's crush the rest of this. Oh, and just put it in the ice? Oh, no worries, Crispy. This is kind of a trial run to see if there's any interest in me doing this, to be completely honest. The other thing that's unfortunate is I don't have, because I'm using the laptop, I forgot to bring over my chat. So you can't actually see the chat on the screen. So if I export it to YouTube, it just looks like I'm a crazy person, which is mostly accurate. I found that extra bag of malt I thought I didn't bring, if anyone cares. Okay, cool. So this part is done and ready to go for tomorrow. We're going to give you a little peek inside the bucket. I also want to put this somewhere where when it covers everything in flour. I'm not pissed off about it. Cool. So this is what it looks like afterwards. So what happens is these hulls, and I don't know how well you can see it, they create a natural filter bed. So when you drain the water, or the sweet wort is what it's called at that point in time, from these grains, it creates a natural filter bed. And it's fantastic in the sense that you don't get a lot of the dust and shit come through. It's actually pretty interesting how good of a job it does. But it also allows you to extract far more sugar from the grains, and you need the sugar to convert to alcohol. The more grains you have, essentially, the higher your alcohol is going to be, in a very simplistic way of explaining it. This you can all see, it's pretty, I wish you could smell it. It smells fantastic. But this almost might be a little bit too fine. No, it's not too bad. I'm not upset about it. But what's nice about having your own mill is you can adjust the thickness as well for how thick you want it. So while that's cooling, we need to start sanitizing a lot of our stuff. So let's spin this bad boy around. Maybe. Get full kitchen cam. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with this camera. This camera's just going to be a break. Let's give you some nice grain to look at for now. Grains crushed. It almost smells like a wet granola bar after you've done your mash. It's kind of interesting. Okay, so that's done. Oven's off. So Erlenmeyer flask is important. Our magnetic bar, that's going to be doing the spinning and dancing till we're ready to brew. This needs to get cleaned and sanitized. Funnel, so I don't spill all of our delicious light beer that we just made everywhere. And here's that bag of malt I couldn't find earlier, so we'll bring that back down later. So what almost everyone uses is this stuff called Star Sand. It's basically an acid sanitizer. If I read the label and cheat and pretend I know what I'm talking about, 1 ounce will do 5 gallons. You can save it in a keg. It's good shit. Great explanation. I always keep it in a spray bottle for this especially because it makes life far easier. Everything that we have here is clean with the exception of this magnetic strip, so I'm going to give this a quick wash. And then I noticed that my stir plate was a little dirty as well, so I'm going to give that a little bit of a wipe down too. Really, anything that you're doing, just clean it. You got to be so particular with your cleaning that if you aren't sure if you cleaned enough, clean until you're sure that you cleaned enough. So one thing that you can see is, like, I got the recipe up still, and you're seeing some stuff that I'm going to talk about further tomorrow if this makes sense to do while I'm brewing and it's not raining outside while I'm brewing. I guess I can do it inside. I just hate brewing in the house because it condensates a lot. There's different mash temperatures, so you always want to have this grain sitting at a temperature that's extracting the right type of sugars, and I think they're complex sugars at that point in time. If you go too hot, it does something that I can't remember off the top of my head because I didn't think I was going to do a live stream about this. And if you go too low, it's not going to extract enough sugar out of it. So usually the lower the temperatures, the less body it will impart to the beer, so it'll be a lighter body beer, which is ideal for kolsch. So you want to do it between 146 and 158 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm even using the American measurements to make everyone feel good. And that's going to give you, for this one, a nice light body beer and still get the extraction rate that we need. My setup's pretty common for home brewing, but it's like when people see it, they kind of have a laugh. I use a big igloo cooler because what you want to do is keep your grains at that temperature for a long period of time. So I do it for 90 minutes, and you want to keep it at 148 for as long as possible, as long as you want to mash for it. And an igloo cooler does a fantastic job. So you put some nicer, like, ball valves on it and things like that, and I have a false bottom in it, which helps strain the wort without bringing any of the grains over. And yeah, igloo cooler works well. There's some other ones. There's different methods. You can get like electronic systems, room systems, which is like a recirculating mash system. Everything works well. It's just a matter of, really for me, mash temperature is not probably my biggest concern. It'd probably be fermentation temperature if I really want to build anything and go crazy. Yeah, LG. I do need a little bit of tin foil. Normally you need an airlock when you're doing beer. Because it's a starter, we're not too concerned about it. So what I just do is I grab a little square of the tin foil and I'll sanitize the hell out of it, and then I'll put it over top of the Erlenmeyer flask and Bob's your uncle. So like even fueling the pot, that's pretty much chilled to where we want it to be. You want to pitch your yeast at a pretty similar temperature. Well, you want to pitch it at the same temperature that it's going to ferment at, or at least for the start of fermentation. My house is usually about 69 degrees, which is probably a little bit on the higher side, but it'll still do a good job for populating my yeast cell count. So yeah, I kind of cheat how I do this. I have a full thing of sanitizer already made, and it's about the same amount that I need. What I do is it only needs about 5 seconds of contact for it to work. And you don't want to fear the foam. Because it's food grade, even if there's some foam left over, it used to sketch the hell out of me, it doesn't matter. So you'll be fine. Life will go on if you make your beer on some foam. Hope that all makes sense. Give me 2 seconds. I just gotta run and grab something. The hell was that noise? Okay. I'd like to thank my American friends. Celebration from Sierra Nevada. I don't get that in Canada. You gotta go over to. I had to climb. Soon I'm gonna have to climb a wall to get that beer. Okay, and now that's in the spray bottle, I can kind of attack everything as much as I deem necessary. Sanitize the yeast pack, your scissors that you cut it with. Some people wear gloves and sanitize the shit out of the gloves. I usually end up touching the so much sanitizer that I'm sure nothing's alive on my hands anymore. What I'm doing here is I'm going to spray the stir stick on top of the tin foil, and that's going to help let it sit. Ooh, it's like water fight territory. And that's basically it. I'll transfer that over, and I'll keep it on to do that, and then I'll show you the stir stick. Oh, I wanted to clean that up a little bit. So let's have a little gander here. Let's keep moving the camera as I go. We've also scared Michelle from coming upstairs and getting a snack. She's worried Screech is going to see what she looks like. This thing is so overkill and overbuilt, but that is okay. That's like picture in picture. I don't really need that. Yeah, we'll keep it over here. We'll let the build the suspense. So what the whirlpool does, and I may have explained this already, is it keeps oxygen, keeps a healthy supply of oxygen essentially. So that's really important out of the gate. But when you make beer, you actually don't want your beer to become oxidized. And even when you transfer, like ideally, you don't want your beers done fermenting. You don't want any contact with oxygen because it gives it a wet cardboard type of taste to it if it gets bad. So it's okay for this because it helps a healthy reproduction of yeast, but it makes bad beers. So what you'll do is you create like an airlock for it essentially to make sure that once carbon dioxide is created, it pushes any oxygen that might be in there. You add as much oxygen as you can when you first brew. So some people have oxygen wands that they'll put in there and pump it full of oxygen. I shake the shit out of mine. It's not as effective, but it works. And after that, it's good. Your yeast is going to get ramped up really quick. I'm assuming with this yeast count, I'll probably I use a blow off valve instead of a bubbler. Basically, it's just a tube coming from whatever I'm fermenting in. I think my conical is used in my stout right now, so I'll be using a bucket or a carboy. And yeah, it'll just use a tube into like a mason jar full of sanitizer, and that way, if the yeast goes crazy and bubbles up to the top, and that like top layer of yeast can travel down your tube, and it can get really disgusting. It kind of prevents against any sort of issues or clogged airlocks or things like that. Clean and important. You got it. I just want to repeat, cleaning is important over and over again, and hopefully that's the one thing you'll take away from this. When Christy starts getting into beer making heavily, I'm not upset about that. I'm going to give it a little bit more just because. I feel like a little bit of a germaphobe right now. Squeeze bottle of sanitizer, best thing in the world you can add to your arsenal. I'm going to do this in the sink. I have an instant read thermometer, but I think I left it downstairs. I'm going to give that an extra minute just to be safe. Too full must die. What was it tonight? You finished the Oreo thins? Oh, look who it is. We got a visit. So we've trained Shelby that she can't come into the kitchen. She's a good girl. So we can play some horrible games out there and break everyone's heart. Speak. What did I say? Good girl. When we did our dog training, went to a personal protection place, and she's not bite trained or anything, but she's drooling on my floor. But the one thing that you train the dogs to do is not take food until they're given permission to. And the way you train that is you crush treats up and you throw it at them. She's not as good as she used to be because I make her catch the treats. Leave it. Which will just leave it. And then break your heart with those eyes. Okay. Hey, look at me. Sit. Okay. Oh, you didn't even catch it. You're a disappointment. But yeah, that's our doggy interlude. So this is our clean jar. We're going to have maybe a little bit of a better view at that. We want to get it to basically 1 liter. Anything over that, this is going to create some yeast at the top, and I'll maybe post some pictures of it once it's ready. And you'll get an idea of what this beer looks like. I may have boiled too long. I don't know that I got the full 1 liter, which is a bit disappointing. At the same time, it's not the worst because I don't really want to boil this over either. Listen to the sound of my sink, people. What, you changing yours? Oh, Yeah, still would be sweet. It was above our heads, so we couldn't see me tormenting my dog. Well, that might be a good thing. So now what we're going to do is drop our magnetic thingamaboober in here. Stir stick. Thingamaboober works too if you want to get super technical with your terms. And I'm feeling good about that. We're going to give this a couple more sprays because God hates a coward. And we're going to stick this sucker on. Ideally, you pitch your yeast before you do this, but sometimes Murdoch doesn't think too clearly. I would have been really pissed if I created the starter with no yeast in it. There would have been some swearing, because then I would have had to make a kolsch with the wrong yeast, and then that would have tasted like poop. I am going to put this on just for the intro, because I don't want anything going in here and messing with me. I do want to give this a quick wash also. These scissors. Yeah, well, you can do it, Screech, by just shaking it every once in a while, but the yeast doesn't propagate as well. So your best bet is to get the stir stick. You can do it with a computer fan and the stir stick though, so it's super easy. And most people build it in like a cigar box. And I wish if I knew then what I know now, I would have done it that way. I didn't even sanitize those. God damn it. Sorry, I'm not used to talking while I do this stuff, and it's making me make mistakes. So this is the yeast going in. It's probably going to be a little bit of a chunk coming in after, coming up the rear. Nice and thick. It smells absolutely delicious. It smells like a good beer. The one thing I don't like with these pure pitch packs, and what's cool is the way they harvest this, is there's no human interaction. So the fact that I'm opening this now and talking over it, which I usually never do, this is the first time it's been exposed. It's kind of like Keanu Reeves coming out of the tube in The Matrix, except it's not Canadian, it's from San Diego. And that is good. God, I love that smell. It smells like bread. Like when dough is rising, that's the exact smell that you get from this. Reminds me of like going to my Omas as a kid. Well, either of them, they both baked like crazy. So it's a little bit of a fine battle getting this working right, but let's tune on into the thing. And I want to make sure I get the camera angle right on this too. Oh fuck, let's just spin the lapper over and do a little picture in picture in picture. Honestly, Screech, I'm probably giving more information than necessary. Boil dry malt extract, pitch yeast, put on stir plate. Cleaning you just learn to do on the regular. What kind of sucked was I didn't have anyone that knew how to brew already. It was just our mutual friend Screech and my mutual friend Dorn and I that learned this together. And yeah, it's one of those things that you learn by making mistakes. So you can kind of start to see now that everything's getting stirred up and it's getting going. You're going to notice it whirlpool at the top. That's when you know it's prime yeast loving territory. And I'm going to let that go all day. So we'll probably be ready to pitch this at this time tomorrow if the brew process goes well. And yeah, we'll be drinking this in probably 2 weeks if everything's good. yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's my first creative stream. I don't know that's necessarily creative as much as just something that I obsessed over for a long time, learning how to do. Um, Very easy. Anyone that wants help with it or is interested, I really enjoy talking about this. Um, I didn't brew as much when I was renovating my basement because I just didn't have the time. But now that I have more time, I'm excited. We're going to get the people. Yeah, Christy, I think I want to try to stream the brew tomorrow if the weather cooperates. So this is the prep. Tomorrow we make the beer. And I know I think I'm interfering with a couple other guys' streams right now, which I apologize for. But it's 9:30 here, so I got to get my ass in gear and get this going. So I'm going to drop the stream now so I can watch the end of the Leafs game with Michelle. But yeah, thanks for hanging out and letting me talk about something I quite enjoy. That was kind of cool. It's cool for me. I just assumed you were constantly asking questions that I got to answer for you. Take care, guys. I'm sure I'll talk to you all very soon. The Akbar, it is legal because it's beer. Shine is illegal. Just comes from meth manufacturer. Thanks, Screech. I really want that associated. Yeah, sorry, Akbar. I'm just dropping it now, but check it if you're interested in making your own beer. This is kind of probably an advanced level lesson more than anything else because everything I did today you don't need to do. But the more stuff you do with your beer, the more, and I'm talking to my phone like that's the camera, the more stuff you do with your beer, and close tab, the more control you have over it. So like, if I wanted to, I could have blended yeast there. That's more common if you're doing sour beers. I can affect every little bit of my grain bill. So you missed it, Akbar, but we crushed all our grains up. This is what we're going to let the water sit in tomorrow to make the beer. And I can add maybe 1 more pound of Pilsner, or I could add something to add maybe a little bit more malt complexity, like some honey malt potentially. And you can really fine tune a beer to your taste, or if you want to do a beer that's true to style, you can do that too. Like the BJCP guidelines are very strict on what qualifies for style in terms of alcohol, gravities, bitterness units, and everything. I don't know that it's good for beer making. I think if you really like, some people really want to make the best IPA, which is fine. But at the same time, maybe you want to throw like a tangerine in with it, a tangerine infused IPA. That might not score as well as a BJCP event as just someone would enjoy it. So it's fun making it to style, and like I have a couple beers that I really want to be true to style. But for the most part, I think just make something that you like and make something that your friends like and share it. Or give it to your hockey team. That's what I'm doing with all of this. You can feed it to horses too, Crispy. Akbar, I make it for myself. Our area got really crazy with breweries because our local college or collegiate or whatever it is opened up a brewmaster program. And there's a whole lot of idiots that have no business or sales experience popping breweries up everywhere, selling really shitty brews. Hey, it was me! Sorry. And yeah, like this is just something I enjoy drinking a good beer, so why not make it? I don't know, anything that I can do myself, I'd like to be able to do. And if I like something, I learn absolutely everything about it before I even try doing it. So yeah. But anyways, I'm dropping the stream now. It's been real and it's been fun. And, oh, that's a lot of these in my face. I'll talk to everyone later.